Here is a number that will mess with your head. Scientists say the average person makes around 35,000 decisions every single day. 35,000. From the moment your eyes open to the moment you crash at night, your brain is constantly choosing, sorting, and deciding. And almost every single one of those decisions is being quietly shaped by one question you probably never ask out loud. What comes first in my life? Now, if I stop someone on the street and ask them that question, most people would say God without hesitating. They say it in church. They say it in prayer. Some of them have it on a wall in their house. But here's the part that almost nobody wants to sit with. You can say something every day of your life and still not be living it. You can have God on your lips and have something else completely running your life. And that gap, that space between what we say and how we actually live, is where so many people stay stuck for years. They love God. They believe in God. But somewhere along the way, their schedule, their fears, their habits, and other people's opinions quietly pushed God out of first place. And the result? They feel overwhelmed. They feel like they are spinning in circles. They feel empty in a way they cannot fully name, even when life on the outside looks fine. What if the reason things feel so hard right now is not because God is absent, but because He is not actually first? What if one real, daily, deliberate shift in priority is the thing that changes everything? That is what this video is about. And by the time we are done, you are going to see your daily life in a completely different way. So let us get into it. The life nobody admits they are living. Before we talk about what changes when God is first, we have to be honest about what life actually looks like when He is not. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to push God to the back. It does not happen like that. It happens slowly. You get busy. Your job needs you. Your kids need you. Your phone needs you. The bills need you. And before long, your whole day is spoken for before you ever even thought about God. You are not a bad person for that. This is just what life looks like without clear priorities. And the tricky part is that the things filling that space are not even bad things. Your family is not bad. Your work is not bad. Your goals are not bad. But when good things take over the space that belongs to God, something starts to break. Think of your life like a phone with too many apps running in the background at once. Everything is open. The battery drains fast. The phone runs slow and overheats. And you keep wondering why it is not working right, even though all the apps you open seem useful. The problem is not any one app. The problem is that everything is running at the same time with no clear order, and the operating system underneath it all is being drained. That is your life when God is not first. Running everything at once, burning out fast, and wondering why you feel so disconnected even when you are constantly busy. And here is something most people miss. The Bible does not tell you to put God first as just a religious rule you follow. It tells you to do it as an act of wisdom. Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." All these other things, the job, the peace, the provision, the relationships, they are not separate from your faith. They flow from it. God is not asking to take something from you. He is asking to be the foundation that makes everything else actually work. So what changes when you make that shift? Here are 7 real, specific, life-altering things that happen when God truly moves into first place. Your mind gets rebuilt from the inside out. The first place that changes is not your circumstances, it is your mind. And this is where everything else begins. Most people spend their whole lives trying to fix the outside, the job, the relationship, the body, the bank account. And they wonder why even when those things improve, they still do not feel right inside. It is because the inside was never dealt with. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Notice it does not say try harder or think more positively. It says be transformed. Transformation is not improvement. You do not transform a caterpillar by painting it different colors. Transformation is a process that happens from the inside out and results in something completely new. When God is first, your mind starts to be renewed. The thoughts that used to run your life start to lose their power. The fears that used to feel like facts start to feel like lies. Old beliefs you picked up from painful moments. Things people said to you that you never let go of. Patterns of thinking that have been working against you for years. They start to become visible. And once you can see them, you can deal with them. Here is a picture that makes this click. If you are standing in a neighborhood, you can only see the street in front of you. Maybe a block in either direction. But if you rise up in a helicopter above that neighborhood, suddenly you can see the whole city. You see where the roads go, what is coming from miles away, things the person on the ground cannot see at all. Putting God first is like getting in that helicopter. You still live on the street, you still deal with real daily life, but your perspective is no longer trapped at ground level. You start seeing your life the way God sees it, above the confusion, above the noise, above what is temporary. And that changes what worries you, what excites you, what feels important, and what suddenly feels very small. This is why people who genuinely put God first seem different. Not in a fake or performative way. They seem lighter, more settled, like something got resolved inside them that used to be constantly tangled up. That is the renewed mind, and it starts the moment God moves into first place. Before moving forward, let me tell you something. Some of you are fighting battles in silence, crying at night, losing hope, wondering if God still hears your prayers. He does, and He has never left you. That's why I created Divinely, Daily Affirmations, an app that reminds you every single day that God is with you, your pain has a purpose, and you are stronger than the storm you're facing. Go to the App Store right now, type Divinely, Daily Affirmations, and download it today. Because the enemy wants you to feel alone. But God wants to remind you every single day that you are loved, chosen, and never abandoned. The weight you were never designed to carry. The second change happens in the area of peace. Real peace. Not the kind where everything is perfect, but the kind that holds steady even when things are falling apart. Here is the truth about anxiety that most people never hear. At its core, anxiety is a control problem. It lives in the space between what you want to happen and your ability to guarantee that it will. You want your child to be safe, but you cannot be everywhere. You want your finances to hold, but you cannot control every variable. You want your health to last, but your body is not entirely yours to manage. And when that gap between what you want and what you can actually control gets too wide, anxiety rushes in to fill it. The reason so many people are anxious right now is not that their lives are uniquely terrible. It is that they are trying to carry something that was never designed to be carried by human hands alone. They are gripping tightly to outcomes they were never meant to control, and the effort of holding on is exhausting them. Philippians 4, 6, and 7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and with thanksgiving, bring your requests to God. And the peace of God, which goes beyond what the human mind can understand, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus." Notice two things. First, it says, every situation. Not just the emergencies, every worry, even the quiet fears that wake you up at 2 in the morning. Second, it says the peace that follows goes beyond understanding. That means you cannot explain it. Your problem is still there. Nothing has changed on paper. But somehow, there is a steadiness underneath you that will not move. That is what happens when you consistently bring your worries to God, instead of grinding on them alone. You stop white-knuckling your way through life, and you start releasing. Not once, not in some big dramatic moment, but daily. Over and over, every time the anxiety tries to crawl back, you bring it back to God. Now let us be honest, this does not feel natural at first. Most people who grew up carrying everything themselves have deeply trained muscles of control. Letting go feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Everything in them screams, "Do not release this." If you stop holding on, everything will fall apart. But the people who push through that feeling, who take the step of trust even when it is terrifying, discover something on the other side that changes them forever. They find that the floor was already there, that God was holding things up long before they let go. And they realize the exhausting grip they maintained was not keeping things together. God was. They were just too tense to feel it. Think of a small child being carried by a parent. The child is not working to hold on. They trust the parent. They relax into the arms. They might even fall asleep mid-carry. They are not less safe because they stopped gripping. They are more safe because they stopped relying on their own small strength and rested in the greater strength already holding them. That is the picture. That is the shift. Your relationships start changing in ways you did not ask for. Here is where things get surprising. Most people think putting God first is a private, internal, devotional kind of thing. Prayer in the morning, Bible before bed. They do not expect it to reach into their friendships, their marriages, their family dynamics. But it absolutely does. And this is one of the most visible changes that happens. The way we treat people is almost always a direct mirror of what is happening inside us. When we are insecure, we seek approval from people constantly. When we are afraid, we become controlling. When we are empty, we demand that other people fill us up in ways they were never designed to. We put human beings in the place of God and then feel hurt when they cannot deliver what only God can give. But when God is first, the source changes. You stop going to people to get what only God can provide. You stop needing others to validate you, because your sense of worth is no longer sitting on what they think. You stop depending on relationships to make you feel okay, because your security is now rooted in something that cannot be taken away. And that freedom turns you into a completely different kind of person to be around. You become someone who gives without needing a return, someone who can listen without making it about themselves, someone who can be honest without being cruel, and patient without being a pushover. You start to love people from a full place instead of an empty one. But here is the part that is hard and important. Putting God first will also reveal which relationships are aligned with your growth and which ones are not. Some people will pull back when you start to change. Some friendships will fade. Some connections that felt easy will start to feel draining because you are no longer the same person you were. That is not rejection. That is refinement. God is not taking people out of your life to hurt you. He is making room for what is actually meant to be there. The connections that are meant to remain will grow stronger and more real than they have ever been. Marriages that were struggling start to shift. Friendships that were surface level start to go deep. Because when even one person brings God into the center of a relationship, something underneath it gets sturdier. Forgiveness becomes possible in places where it felt completely out of reach. Is about to shift. There is a quiet crisis happening inside millions of people right now, and most of them cannot name it. It is not about money or health. It is a crisis of identity. They do not know who they are at the core. You might have been living in your body for decades. How could you not know who you are? But the truth is, most people are walking around with an identity that was built by something that can be taken away. Built on what they do, so when they lose the job, they lose themselves. Built on how they look, so aging feels like disappearing. Built on what people think of them, so one bad comment can ruin an entire week. Built on their success, their relationship status, or how many people follow them online. And all of those things have one thing in common: they can all disappear overnight. When your identity is built on something that can leave, you spend your whole life in a low-grade state of fear. Because somewhere inside you know that if that thing goes, you go with it. Ephesians 2:10 says you are God's masterpiece, not his rough draft, not a project he might abandon if it does not turn out right. His masterpiece. Created with purpose and intention before you ever did a single thing to earn it. That is not something you have to maintain. It is something you already are. Think about the difference between a house on sand and a house on rock. From the outside, on a calm day, they look identical. Same walls, same roof. You cannot tell them apart until the storm hits. Then one stands and one falls. The difference is not in the storm, it is in what is underneath. When God is first, your identity gets moved from sand to rock. The storms still come, but you stop shattering. And this changes your decisions too. When you know who you are in God, you stop making choices out of desperation. You stop saying yes to things just because you are afraid of what people will think if you say no. You start acting from a place of strength instead of fear. You become someone with quiet confidence, not because you have everything figured out, but because you know who holds you. Moses is the picture of this. When God called him, Moses had every reason to feel like the wrong guy. He was a fugitive. He struggled to speak. He had already failed. He basically gave God a list of reasons to pick someone else. But God's answer was not, "I will fix your weaknesses." It was, "I will be with you." That was all Moses needed. And that ordinary, reluctant man went on to lead millions out of slavery and spend more time in God's presence than almost anyone in history. Not because of who Moses was alone, because of who he was with God first. Your everyday life starts to look different on the outside. Everything we have talked about so far is internal: mind, peace, relationships, identity. But here is the part that surprises people. Putting God first eventually shows up in your habits, your schedule, your daily follow-through. And this is where many spiritual conversations stop short. When God is first, you start to see your time differently. It is no longer just yours to spend however feels good in the moment. It is entrusted to you, and that changes how you use it. You start giving God the first part of your day, and that anchor changes everything that follows. You become more intentional. You waste less energy on things that do not matter. You start finishing what you begin, not because someone is watching, but because something in you has been reoriented toward purpose. Psalm 5:3 says in the morning, "Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning I lay my requests before you and wait." Morning, first thing, before the noise, before the phone, before the day comes rushing in. There is something powerful about giving God the first moments. It is like putting a foundation under the next 16 hours. The rest of your day gets built on top of whatever happened in those first quiet moments with Him. And the discipline that grows in your spiritual life starts to spill into everything else. You become someone whose word means something, someone who follows through, someone who acts from intention instead of just emotion. You will have distracted days and focused days, but over time the consistency builds, and 6 months later you barely recognize who you were before. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." That word establish means to make firm, to make lasting. Your effort carries your plans so far, but when God is the one you are committing your work to, things get built in a way that your effort alone could not hold together. Hard seasons will never look the same again. This is the one that ties everything together, and it might be the most powerful shift of all. When God is first, the way you experience suffering, setbacks, and hard seasons changes completely. Not because hard things stop happening, they do not, but because the framework through which you read them is completely different now. Most people, when everything falls apart, ask the same question: why is this happening to me? That question comes from a belief that hard things are evidence of something going wrong, that pain means God has backed away, that setbacks mean you are heading in the wrong direction. And when that is your framework, hard times will always feel like a personal attack. They will hollow you out in a way that nothing can fill back up. But when God is first, a different question begins to rise up. Not why is this happening to me, but what is God doing through this? That one shift, from me to through, changes everything. Because now the hard season is not a wall, it is part of the path, not evidence that God left. One of the ways He works most deeply. Romans 5:3-5 says, "Suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and character produces hope." Suffering is not the enemy in that passage. It is the start of a chain reaction that ends in hope. It produces something. It is not pointless. It is not wasted. It is working on you right now. Think about how steel is made. Raw iron by itself bends easily and rusts. But when you put it through extreme heat and pressure, what comes out is steel. Strong, flexible, durable, able to hold up things it never could before. That is what hard seasons do to people who let God work through them instead of just trying to survive them. They come out shaped, stronger in the places that used to break, able to carry weight that would have crushed them before. There is a story in Daniel chapter 3 about 3 young men thrown into a furnace so hot that the soldiers who threw them in died from the heat. But inside, the men did not burn. And when the king looked in, he saw not 3 figures but 4. Someone else was in there with them. That is the promise. God does not always promise to keep you out of the fire. He promises to be in it with you. And here is what happens over time when you read your hard seasons this way. You stop being paralyzed by them. You stop feeling like every setback is the end of the story. You start walking through difficulty with something that looks like courage, even when you do not feel brave, because you know whose hands you are in. And those hands have never dropped anything they were holding. This is where it all lands. Let us bring it home. When you put God first, your mind begins to be renewed from the inside out. Old patterns break, lies lose their grip, a higher perspective opens up above the noise. Your anxiety starts to lose its power, not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer carrying it alone. The weight shifts to hands that were built to hold it. Your relationships change in ways you did not plan for. You become free to love well because you are no longer demanding from people what only God can give. Your identity stops being a moving target and starts being anchored in something that cannot be taken away. Your daily discipline grows. Your mornings become intentional. Your follow-through becomes real. And hard seasons stop feeling like the end of everything and start feeling like chapters with purpose, with meaning, with a God who is present in every single line. None of this happens overnight. Putting God first is not a one-time decision you make and then coast on forever. It is a daily choice. It is getting up tomorrow and choosing Him first again. It is in the middle of your worst day, deliberately turning toward Him instead of away. It is slow, steady, daily building of a life aligned with something bigger than yourself. And the life you build on that foundation is not a lesser life. It is not about giving things up. It is the most fully alive version of the life you were created to live. A life where things make sense even when they do not make sense. Where you have peace in places that should be chaos. Where you love people in ways that used to feel impossible. Where you get back up after being knocked down, not because you are tough, but because you know who picks you up. Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." He is not asking you to choose between a good life and a life with God. He is telling you that the good life, the real one, the one that actually satisfies, is on the other side of putting Him first. You are not behind. You are not too broken. You are not too late. The invitation is open right now, in whatever season you are standing in. If this hits something in you today, drop in the comments, "God, I choose you first." That is your declaration. Share this with someone who is stuck and needs to hear it. Hit like if this moved you. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what is coming next. And before you go, one question for the comments. What is the one area of your life where you know, deep down, that God has not truly been first? Be honest. That honesty is where everything begins.